Mirrors are one of my favorite features in Monday. They're super powerful and it can be used in multiple ways to simplify how you work and really extend how your workflow operates. So we're going to talk about exactly what mirrors are and some ways that you can use them operationally in your workflow to simplify what's happening inside Monday. So a mirror basically is the ability to take data from a board. For example, here we've got a contact board and we can mirror information related to this item or the line item here into another board. So you can see here that I've got a pipeline board and I'm mirroring in data related to my contact board. And it can be really useful in a couple of ways. You can automate data flowing between boards, and then you can utilize mirrors to represent central information, for example, a contact database that can extend out to multiple different workflows. So let's just talk through, the logistics of mirrors and what they look like in terms of execution and how you can set them up effectively. So when you think about mirrors, I think it's really important to talk about and take a gauge of what your structure looks like in Monday. And that's where you can really extend the use of mirrors inside your workflow. So if you're able to critically think about structures that can hold data in central locations and can be mirrored out into your workflows, that's where they're going to be most effective. And the example we're going to use is really just a simple flow between having a contact inside Monday, and you may have a fully fledged CRM operating inside Monday. You may want to populate that contact data out into the tracking of deals, and then you might want to also farm that contact data out into your operational work. So it gives you the full life cycle of maintaining a customer record, but also taking that data and mirroring it out to different workflows throughout the entire life cycle of the customer. So what we have in this board is really just a simple view of a contact, and this may be our starting point in terms of when we have an initial engagement with a client or we have a job or a prospect, we populate it with a contact. Now I understand this is really simple at the moment. There may be situations where you have companies and contacts. What we're really focusing on today is the simplicity of mirrors and the best way to structure them to extend them out into optimizing your workflow. So in this example, what I've got is I've got the contact name. I might have a business name, for example. So let's call this my business. We've got an email address. I'll make this mine. Now I've got a phone number. We've got an email trigger, and we've got a trigger there to enter the pipeline. So I'll talk about this email trigger when we look at the mirror and where it ends up in our workflows. And we've got an enter pipeline here, which is simply just set up to create the automation that connects our boards through mirroring and creates the item in the pipeline board. So the idea here is that I've got a contact. My next stage is that they're going to turn into a potential deal, and I wanted them to enter my pipeline board. So you can see here, this column here gives me the ability to set a pipeline as yes, and you'll see I have an automation here that's set up. This is a custom one, which says when enter pipeline changes to yes, I want to create an item in my pipeline, and then I want to connect the boards, so pipeline with a contact. So you can see in my pipeline board, what I have here is I have a connected boards column already established prior to setting up that automation. And you can see here, these are my mirror fields. So what this is that I'm mirroring the data from the contact board when I create a new item. So let's say for this contact here, I want to enter my pipeline. I'll click yes. It's then going to do the automation that is going to populate this item here in this board, and it's going to pull in the mirrored data. So you can see now I have my mirrored item in here that's been automated. With that automation, what it's done is it's taken the business name from this item here, and it's created a new item in my pipeline. It's set its status as active. I've got columns in this board that I can set now, so let's set some data there. I've got a deal value, maybe a probability that we could utilize for reporting or deal flow. And then I've got my mirrored information. So this is my contact record here. So what that means is I don't have to recreate the contact data inside my workflow board for my pipeline. All I need to do is reference it, and it's done it automatically. So I've pulled in the email address for that contact, and I've got an email trigger button here. So the benefit of this is now I've got the ability to move this item through different stages of work. I've also retained a central place to mirror in that contact information. So if I need to reference the client's email, or I need to utilize a trigger here, it's all available in this mirrored information. So once I want to move this through to a different workflow, let's say our pipeline goes to 1, and our next process is that we want to move this through to operations. You can see here I also have an automation that's set up that when my status changes to 1, what I'm now going to do is create an item in operations, and I'm going to connect operations with the contact data. So what that means is that I'm essentially just following that same flow where we did with our contact through to pipeline. I'm now doing pipeline through to operations, so I can have a new item created in my operations workflow. So the benefit of this is that we're still retaining the same contact information throughout that workflow. So I'm able to retain the data all the way from contact through to pipeline and then through to operations. And mirroring in the information like email trigger, for example, is where we can really extend the use of our mirrors into our workflows and operational work. So having a central contact database or storage of contacts becomes really useful when we want to automate the communication or collaboration externally to those contacts. And using mirroring, what we can do is we can do that in any workflow. But what we're going to create is a central location to record that contact information. So if I've got a complex business where I run multiple boards, different operational work across different functions and teams, for me to have centralized communication, it can be very difficult, especially when you come back to structure. Some people might be integrating Gmail into all these different boards, and the communication can sometimes get lost in terms of what's happening with the contact. With the utilization of mirrors and a well-structured contact database, you're able to streamline how information is sent to the client, but also keep it siloed in terms of you don't have to change the functionality of your boards and the way that you work. All you have to do is restructure how your contacts are set up and how you mirror data from those contacts into those workflow boards. And there's multiple different ways you could do that. In this example, what we've gone through is a logical flow to go from contact through to pipeline and then through to operations. So if I'm working through this potential flow here, you can see that I've mirrored in my email trigger board, email trigger column, which is coming through from this mirror here in pipeline and essentially lives in this location here in my contact database. You can see here I've got an integration with Gmail that says when email trigger changes to contact email, send an email. So that can really simplify one where all your integrations are set up and your contact emails are set up in one location, but you're also able to trigger that information directly from your workflow board by utilizing mirrors. And that's the real power of a mirror, to extend its use across multiple workflows and ensure that there's simplicity in where people work so they don't have to jump in and out of boards to reference data or to trigger automations. So we can see here if I create a certain trigger here, it's a contact email. We can see that through our integration, that should run, and it's going to create, a contact record on that particular contact item. So we can see here, we've now got an outgoing email that's been sent automatically, and it's contained against our contact. So really importantly, I think that gives us a central chain to record information, but we can also trigger those emails within any workflow. So that's where you should start thinking about mirrors. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be contact database as a central structure. There's multiple ways you could utilize mirroring by taking advantage of the right structure and ensuring that the mirrored data makes sense when you're logically looking at how your workflow should run. So hopefully this example has given you some ideas around how you can use mirrors successfully and how you can use them efficiently and at scale to really simplify how you work with Monday.